I can feel myself rot. The pain of being dead.
You don't seem to have much, if any, reasoning power.
"17 seconds. Reanimation at 17 seconds. The eyes open."
Not dead? Are you mad? I saw her die. The doctor signed a certificate. I saw them bury her.
Look at the face. It's vacant, with a hint of sadness. Drunk, lost a red.
"Infected with what?"
Rage.
In the midst of a pandemic, we took a break. For Halloween, we're back from the dead. Blood and Black Rum podcast is Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum podcast. I'm Ryan from cultsploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
We're back again with another episode of our Reanimated series for Halloween. If you didn't listen to the last episode, or for some reason, we've been doing zombie films for Halloween for this year because we took quite a long hiatus when the pandemic started, and we decided that we wanted to come back at least for Halloween and do our usual stuff, get back to the people who love us. So the theme is zombies. Last week we did Dawn of the Dead, not the original, but the remake by Zack Snyder. If you listen to that episode, you'll see that we are not huge fans of that film, at least contemporarily. Maybe back when, a long time ago we were, but not anymore. And this week, we've got a fun film that kind of corresponds with Dawn of the Dead. Obviously not the remake, but the original. Talking about 1979's Zombie, or Zombie 2, if you are referring to the Italian version of the film. But in any case, it's the film with the zombie and the shark. You can refer to it that way. The Lucio Fulci film with the zombie and the shark. And that should give you everything that you need to know if you've seen it before. If you haven't, then your interest is piqued. I think that's where a lot of the appeal for Zombie came from, especially for like American shores. People not really knowing much about it, hearing the name, and then hearing some tidbits, probably from people who have seen it or magazines, things like that, about like, oh yeah, there's a zombie that fights a shark in it. It's pretty cool. There's a famous eye-gouging scene in it. And gore hounds were like, I gotta see this movie. And this could have even been post-1979, because like a lot of these Italian films that were released, they were pretty hard to see. So you had this movie that comes out, and then you have the hearsay, the people who are like, it's pretty gory, it's pretty violent, good special effects, cool zombies, you should see it. And so you have that kind of culmination of people who are hearing about this film and not able to see it, and then eventually, like on home video, VHS, something like that, they eventually see it in poor quality, and they say, wow, that was everything I was expecting and more. And thus, the gorehound, the Fulci fan, they were born. Now, obviously, we are not old enough to have been a part of that crowd. by the time we were born and around and watching films, those movies were pretty, I wouldn't say readily available, but they were more widely available than, previously. And there were still some issues with like trying to find a good quality version or like an uncut version, but not to the extent that people in the 80s would have had trying to track down films like this. So you said that you've actually never seen Zombie before.
I have not.
And the naming convention was sort of a confusing point for you. Right?
Yeah.
Because you said you knew that the Zombie 2...
I knew of Zombie 2.
Zombie 2 had a shark in it.
I didn't know that part.
Oh, you didn't know that
No,
part.
I just knew that in Italy, as they like to do, when something makes money, they just make something else unrelated, slap a name on it that's the same, and sequelize it. So, I mean, being a fan of the original Dawn of the Dead, I did know that in Italy it was called Zombie, and then they had Zombie 2.
Yep.
Which was done by Luca Fulci, which I knew about. That's like about the sound of it. That's how I do. Just never saw it because, as we have done a bunch of Italian films on here, as you know from all those reviews, very, even still to this point, still very on them. They've been more misses than there have been hits with me.
Okay, so the interest in Italian film in general.
If you think about it,
besides spaghetti westerns,
when we did like all those Dario Argento films, the only one that I've really been like in awe of was Tenebrae. I like Tenebrae. Phenomena, I thought was not bad. Suspiria, I thought it looks good, but it's a pretty boring film, And then some of the Giallos we've done, I've been like, So
you weren't like in a rip-roaring mood to go out and watch Zombie.
No, it's the same thing too. Like I love spaghetti westerns too, but they're very much a hit or miss.
Oh, those yeah, for sure. And a lot of that too comes from the fact that everybody and their mom had to make a film like that once they became popular. So it was like, as spaghetti westerns getting popular, everybody's got to do the man who needs vengeance for his mom being raped and murdered in the village or something like that. That was like because we have a cluster of spaghetti westerns that did that idea basic to the T. They have a mentor who comes along to help them get revenge.
Do you think they just did? Do you think they just did it because they're like, listen, Hollywood's not hiring Lee Van Cleef anymore,
right?
He really needs the money.
And then the other thing, that you have with like Italian films too, is that there was a lot of Italian productions that saw the appeal of an American film, and they wanted to remake it, or I shouldn't say remake, but basically reuse the idea, recycle the idea for Italian audiences at a cheaper budget, and then have it basically be the same idea, but just done differently. So there's a ton of those that came out of the Italian films of the 80s. I wouldn't say Zombie fits into that category. It's not really a derivative film that's a take off of Dawn of the Dead. Yes,
it does. It does borrow though, because a lot of 70s films at the time. I mean, the fact it's set in the Caribbean, kind of opening off of some blaxploitation. Same thing with like the whole voodoo element. Yeah,
I think that well, for one thing, the Caribbean element to this film is more in line with the cannibal films of the early 80s, which would, they're similar, related to zombie films in a way, and they have the same gore effects that you would expect, ripping flesh, teeth, stuff like that. But I would say that Fulci's Zombie is more in line with what we get from cannibal films later on. You do, I agree. You see some of Dawn of the Dead's influence here. The effects, particularly, like you definitely see the the elements of Dawn of the Dead's effects creep into here. And even, some of the goblin score is influenced here, or is an influence, I should say, here for Fabio Frizzi, but he takes off on his own tangent as well with Zombie. So I think that we're working with both.
As I said when we were watching it, I think you're right. It does kind of have hints of like the Goblin soundtrack, but I would say almost to a point, the soundtrack here kind of influences the Day of the Dead soundtrack of Romero because, and that actually, one's very like got Caribbean tones and very overly, synth, especially like 80s style synth. But,
yeah, and I think we're working off of both. So you're saying, Dawn of the Dead is certainly an influence on Zombie, and then Zombie is also an influence on Day of the Dead. You have that same doctor character who is sort of like the guy who's working. He's a doctor. He's trying to figure it out, but he's also...
Tom Savini brought his A game to Day of the Dead compared to Dawn of the Dead.
Sure. Yeah.
Which, when we get deeper into the film, there's a comparison you can make on effects.
Right.
That,
Yeah. So I see it both ways. I see Zombie as, certainly influenced by Dawn of the Dead. It goes its own separate direction, though, for the most part, and it definitely doesn't have the social element that Dawn of the Dead has, or at least what it now has, how contextually we see that criticism of the film. But I would say that Zombie has its own elements as well, and I don't want to say that it's derivative of Dawn of the Dead like some other Italian films like Shocking Dark, which is basically a rip-off of, films like Terminator 2 and other elements like that. It's not a rip-off per se. It's its own separate element that Fulci brings that is probably one of his better works in general. Not only because the plotting is more understandable, it has a plot that for the most part makes sense throughout, which can't really be said of a film like House by the Cemetery, which sort of loses itself in its own weirdness. And it doesn't have as much, I shouldn't say it doesn't have any, but it doesn't have as much of the perceived misogynistic elements of Fulci's The New York Ripper, which has been a controversy of that film and Fulci in general over his career. So it doesn't have that either. So it's kind of its own beast in Fulci canon. And
as you said when we were watching it, the great line of the 70s when it comes to women, you're hysterical. Just constantly the man telling her, like, you're being delusional, hysterical.
Yeah, it's if a woman has an issue, especially in like the 70s, it's not
hysteria.
It's not real.
It's hysteria.
Yeah, it's just hysteria.
They're just one good hard firm fist away from being understanding.
Absolutely. All right. How far? We're pretty far in. Let's go ahead and break, and we'll talk beer on the show. And I don't have an ad to play right now, so we'll just go right into it. Let me cue up my Zombies Ate My Neighbors theme for the beer talk. Okay, we're good to go. We can't talk beer without the Zombies Ate My Neighbors theme for this. So, did you want to talk the Oktoberfest that we had today, or did you want to talk the beer that we have right now?
We can do both.
We can do both. All right.
We can do both. There's no point, because one of them will get left to the wayside.
That's true. Yeah, we'll probably never do it again if we don't do it now. So that's a good idea. So we'll go with the October first. First. The beer that we started with, because we're luscious and we generally don't have just one beer during the podcast. It's called Blood and Black Rum Podcast for a reason, even though we don't normally have black rum on it. So we started with Zero Gravity's Oktoberfest, which I've never had before. I've never had a zero. I didn't check actually. I should have, but I don't think I've ever had a Zero Gravity beer before. I maybe once had like an IPA from them Although that could have just been called a zero gravity IPA because they also use that as a moniker for IPA. So I really can't remember if I've ever had a zero gravity beer.
I am pretty sure we haven't. Like the only Vermont breweries off the top of my head that we get around here.
Magic Hat.
Magic Hat, which actually I think they closed down their Vermont plant.
Long Trail from Vermont?
Yep, Long Trail, which is like the Vermont Saranac, essentially, and Two Roads.
Oh, okay. Two Roads is from Vermont as well.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I don't see zero gravity very often. And that makes sense because it's not widely distributed. For one thing, they're generally in 4-packs, like 16-ounce 4-packs, and that's what this Oktoberfest was. One thing that I find interesting about distributing Oktoberfest in 4-packs is that generally Oktoberfests are fairly drinkable, meant to be drank in like sort of a session, even though they're a heavier sort of beer. The Oktoberfest idea is to drink many. And so I find it interesting that some places are marketing their Oktoberfest as like a craft pack, like a significant IPA would be. Because I don't generally see Oktoberfest in that style. I would expect them to be like a 12-ounce crusher. You just, power through them.
That's why the Founders 15 pack is so delightful.
Perfect. Yeah. So a perfect way to enjoy, especially if you're going to a party and you got a bunch of people enjoying Oktoberfest, pop out that Founders 15 pack. The Zero Gravity is a 4-pack, 16-ounce. Not super expensive. It was like $10 for the 4-pack, so not too bad. Or at least not what it could have been, for a 4-pack. Sometimes they go $15-20. So the Zero Gravity Oktoberfest is a traditional Marzen style, and I would say that it is not as malty as the Thin Man Brewing one that I've had. The Founders is fairly malty as well. And I would say that this one is probably a little bit less than both of those, though still on the maltier side for an German Oktoberfest.
Still feels like fall.
Still feels like fall. That's right. Yeah, I don't know where maltiness came from to say that maltiness is the fall flavor, but it certainly does now that we've had so many.
For us, though, it's when because our first love was Sam Adams Oktoberfest, and just like cracking that on a nice, back when they used to still release, fall packs in like the beginning of November.
Yeah.
Cracking that open, being like, with the crisp breeze, the cool night.
Yep.
The malts just make it feel like fall.
So, I don't know why, but they do.
Which is a far cry from what Sam Adams' fucking fall pack is this year. Yeah. 76, the lager, Oktoberfest, and pumpkin.
Just a bad pack. So with the Zero Gravity, though, what did you think, in comparison to other Oktoberfests you had and, in just the general flavor profile?
I liked it a lot. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 4 on Untapped. It was crisp, it was nice and malty, but like a nice balance between like a more German style and an American, because it was malty, but not like super malty. Light and refreshing, even though it's like 6 ABV. Very delightful. I wish that'd be like a 12. That'd be a good 12-pack to get.
Yeah.
It's kind of sucks that you only had it in a 4-pack because you're gonna be longing.
Right.
And I liked it quite a bit. I'd get it again.
Yeah, I definitely would check it out again. I was impressed. Not having a Zero Gravity beer before that I know of. Would definitely check it out again. And I'm just one of those people that will just try anybody's Oktoberfest. I'm going to give it a shot no matter who you are. In general, during the fall season, I don't like to stick with just one Oktoberfest. I'll go everybody's.
No, you got to try them all.
I'll try them all. I'll just keep giving me different Oktoberfest, and we'll just go through it and find the absolute best one that you possibly can find, because I would say that there's some variability to Oktoberfest, but not a huge variability to them. They all have the same sort of flavor profile, at least for American styles. The one that I can think of that would be, some of a slightly different take on Oktoberfest would be the Darktoberfest from Saranac, which we've talked about before, and how much we like that.
A billion times.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be a different take on it. Although, for the most part, I feel like many of the Oktoberfest are fairly similar in style. They don't change too much with the recipe. So yeah, check out Zero Gravity Oktoberfest. Really pretty good. Vermont brewery. The next beer that we have was one that we've been looking for a long time. I think we talked about it maybe on the last show, or at least mentioned that we were looking for it. As you've probably, if you've listened to our show before, you know that we have Genesee Brewing Company on the show quite a bit as we try all of their different the brewhouse pilot batches and the various cream ales that they release on a seasonal basis, because we are big fans of what they do with the cream ales, and they've sort of extended themselves past the general cheap beer line to try new things, especially in the craft world. And so one that had been eluding us for a while is the new cream ale that they've put out. And is it a summer seasonal? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Technically fall.
I
mean, before this, they had the lemon strawberry cream ale, which we've done.
And that's really the summer seasonal?
Which that was last summer that came out, like right at the tail end. And that lasted until just now, where they replaced it with a new cream ale style.
Yep.
Which is the dry hopped cream ale.
Yeah.
Which they've done before in their cream ale variety pack. They've done
the Mosaic
dry hopped cream ale, which was very good.
Yeah. That's that actually, bringing that up, that was a very confusing point on Untappd to try to find the correct one, because they had a bunch of different dry hops on there, and like they had the Mosaic dry hop. People were incorrectly checking into that one with the dry hop cream ale, and it's not that one.
And I know that they've done other types of styles just at their brew house where you can only get it on tap. They've done like different like hop variety and like flavor profiles on the cream ale, which haven't gotten a wide release.
Yep. This one is really good. It is in line with something like the Noble Pills, which
was a great spring seasonal from Sam Adams.
Yep. So it is sort of like that with the hop profile to it. And I might even guess that they did use Noble hop. I don't know what hop they used in this, but they may have used the Noble hops in this, because it is very similar in taste to that. What we actually get is a very light beer, refreshing, crisp. It's like 4.5% or something like that, so it's on the lighter side, sessionable, and obviously low in calories as well, because when you're talking about alcohol content, the higher the alcohol content, generally the higher the calorie count as well. And not only that, but you do get, with that hop balance, get a little bit of that lemony flavor to it as well from the hop. Just a tad. It's not like overwhelmingly lemon, but certainly a nice citrus bite to it on the end. And I think it's really good. It's very drinkable, very easy to pound through.
Yeah, I agree. Great and piney. The hop, you're right, very well maybe a Noble hop, which adds a nice characteristic to their cream ale style, which is one of my favorite styles. As I've said a billion times before in the podcast, I wish other brewers would try something with the cream ale and do something different, because it's a style that I think would lend itself to different, like a billion different craft varieties, with all the different types of fruits and hops you can add to it.
And I would say that it's got a very, very light bitterness to it, just very, very smooth. So even people that don't
kind of like a Rec League, that's from which not nearly as light as the Rec League, but that's got like that right amount of, especially for like a super light pale ale where it's got that fresh piney hop bite to it, but it's very just light beer itself, and that pininess is like a quick like hard kiss, like mwah, and it's like gone.
Just a little peck.
Yeah, little peck.
Then you're done. This one, folks, is going to be hard to find probably in your area if you are not in upstate New York at all. And
I think they are widely distributing this.
Are they really?
Yeah, like it's going to be distributed. They were saying they plan on distributing it across the country to the places they generally distribute the rest of their Genesee products. So
Interesting.
it's not like the brew house stuff where some of it's limited to like the Northeast, like when they release like Scotch Ale and they're like salted caramel porter. This should be getting a wide release, so it should be available.
It's just weird that it wasn't for us.
I think in like a week or two, because I had to go out, an hour to Utica to get it, so it's gonna get here. I think right now, just because of the pandemic and stuff, it's
basically
slow going. Because there's also a 12-ounce can shortage too right now. Because of aluminum. So
basically, if you want this beer right now, the upstater you are, the better for New York, I would say.
Yeah, the further to Western New York, the closer you are to Western New York, Because I was almost thinking driving out to Syracuse and just going to Wegmans and be like, fuck it, Because that's the Disneyland of grocery stores anyway. Just go in there and
absolutely, just have some fun in there.
Just make it a day,
That's right. Stop at the deli.
Yeah, get all the different types of olives and stuff. God knows what.
All right,
but I would definitely say, I look forward to this being around, all year. It's gonna be great,
Yeah, it would have been good to have during the summer because they are so light and refreshing.
Would have been a good mix-up to go between the Kolsch and that,
Yeah, now, it's sometimes 40 degrees outside in New York State, so we're dealing with a quick onset of fall temperatures.
Yeah, we didn't have any in between summer and
not really.
Fall.
No.
Fall just came.
Yeah. Bam. Let me stop this. Gotta say, I do like that Zombies Ate My Neighbors theme. It's fun. It reminds you of being extremely pissed off that you couldn't get past like the chopping mall section of the game or something like that, where all those fucking dolls that come out of the box. Yeah.
I wonder if they have like a cheat code for like invincibility on it.
Well, they have cheat codes where you could.
No, I know they have levels,
different levels, but I think those are predicated on what you did in the previous game.
I think
right?
you can use any password.
Maybe. But I thought it was fitting to use Zombies Ate My Neighbors theme for, the Zombies Reanimator series that we're doing. So hopefully everybody just picked up on that in the last episode.
You should have just picked a random like Resident Evil song or,
Yeah. Just something, that isn't as immediately recognizable.
Or some thing random from Fatal Frame. For all you weebs out there.
All right, so getting into Zombie.
Or Zombie 2.
Or Zombie 2, however you want
with
to refer to it. Yeah, with just the eye. So the plot basically is very simple. Very simple. You have a woman who
just call her throughout the film. Throughout the review. Woman, and then there's man.
Yeah. You've got Anne, who's played by Tisa Farrow, Tisa Farrow happens to be Mia Farrow's sister, just, not as widely recognized as Mia Farrow. But you got Anne, who is looking for her father. He's gone to some random Caribbean island called Matul, where he has obviously been...
Are you sure it's not Gorm? Gorm Arthur.
He's apparently he's had some trouble because he hasn't come back. And
I just like the idea that his boat went from the fucking Caribbean all the way up to New York City's harbor.
Yeah.
And it's not a sailboat, so how did it power its way all the way up?
I don't know.
Was it the zombie that was on board just sitting there filling it up?
Pushed.
Gasoline the entire time?
The zombie got in the water and pushed.
Yeah. Because as we'll find out, they can,
They can swim. So we've got Anne and then Peter, played by Ian McCulloch. They're heading to Matul along with a guy, basically a red bearded dude, who is their shuttle to the island, and his woman.
Huh? His woman friend.
His woman friend, who just randomly likes to go scuba diving almost in the nude. She basically has a string thong that she wears while scuba diving. And you know what? I don't blame her. It looks freeing. It's certainly, you're just going in the water, let the water lap you up while you're basically skinny dipping in front of people you've never met before.
They're not even fazed by it either. They're like, oh god.
Well, you can see that
has lust in his eyes.
Sure does. Because there's a nice ogling scene of his, she's stripping off, going in scuba diving, and Peter's sort of just like, I was feeling up Anne on a crime scene boat, but now I'm interested in this curly-headed woman.
Peter used Lear. Super creepy.
Not only,
which, by the way, the best part about them Anne and Peter being on that boat, because the New York City Harbor Patrol stops them to get the cops to let them go. They, fake fooling around. And he's like, oh, yeah, you just wanted to come here because the boxcar wasn't good enough. Like, who wrote this? A hobo? Like,
what else do tramps like me at Tisa Farrow do? They have sex in boxcars. They're homeless people.
I just like it too. The cops like, all right, kids.
Well, yeah,
get out of here.
That's the thing about that opening sequence. That after the zombie attack and everything, so they're treating it obviously like a murder scene. There's actually a chalk body outline in there, and he sees this couple in there, and he's not like, oh my god, you just tampered with the crime scene. He's just like, you kids. And, Ian McCulloch's like 50 years old in this. So, it's not really like just kids being kids, messing around, smoking a little dope and having some sex. It's not really the case in this scenario, but he treats it as such. But anyway, so they, all of them are on a boat heading to Matul, and Matul is known for its cursed land, basically. Zombie treats the island as like the mysticism of how you think of like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Of like, there's this mysterious island out there that we don't know about.
God, if only Brando was in this to be Kurtz.
Yeah. And there's a native people on this island, and they practice voodoo, and we don't know anything about them.
Which that's also something too. We don't get to see the voodoo priest ringleader.
No, we don't.
They talk about him, but we don't ever get to see.
And you hear the drums. There's the drums, and we're actually going to cover an actual voodoo zombie film with White Zombie later on in this series. But yeah, we get those drum beats and things like that are pretty reminiscent of the 30s, early 30s movies about zombies with voodoo rituals that weren't really...
Or Jumanji.
But those types of things, they weren't really like racially sensitive to, the types of like island natives that you would have. So they treat them like outsiders, and we don't know their customs. They do. I don't know. They do weird native things on this island, and we're not trying to understand them. We just want to fix them. That's basically that is the reason that our main doctor person on the island, Dr. Menard, is there. He's there. He's like studying this weird voodoo thing that happens where the dead come back to life.
Doesn't even seem like he is. He seems like the most useless fucking doctor in the world. On his downtime, he's sitting there drinking away, and then when he's actually studying, he's like, well, they're gonna die. Tie him up and shoot him. Yeah, Doctor, why is this happening? I don't know why it's happening.
He's been there for a while now.
I know. It seems like he's been there for like 5 years, and he's just like, I don't fucking know. And it's like, well...
Yeah,
I gotta help him, and it's like, you're not even doing anything to help him.
Well, that's what he says. Like, there's that one time where his assistant comes, the nurse comes to him and says, yeah, he's gonna die. Yeah, it looks like he's gonna die. He's like, we must help them. We must help him. And then they go back, and he just shoots him in the fucking head with a blanket around his head. I'm like, oh, that was your help. Okay, you're putting him out of his misery. Gotcha. Yeah, that Dr. Menard.
Useless.
He's it's like he's like the white savior character though, who's like, I must help these natives from whatever this curse is. I've got to figure it out scientifically, and gets absolutely nowhere. And actually, is partly the reason why all of these people die. Because Dr. Menard just won't give it up.
Maybe the curse was put on the island because he's been there for too long, you know, and he's been, running around like, voodoo's a bunch of bullshit. And they're like, oh, I'll show you,
And we can't really come to that conclusion about Anne's father, because Anne's father was on the island as well, but he ended up dying before Anne gets there. And so we don't really know that much about her father in terms of like what he's been doing on the island.
He said he just wanted to be there because he's like, I'm fascinated. I need to learn.
Yeah.
Why? Is like you'll see him like day 2 down, or like a journal or anything. It's just, I got to be down there with my good friend Dr. Menard.
Yeah, that's the thing about Dr. Menard too. Is like we don't even see him doing any scientific things. Like he literally, there's like no test tubes. I take that back. We do see one where he's dropping blood on a slide. But other than that, we're not...
Wilford Brimley, he is not.
Yeah, we're not even treated to, like, the mad scientist part of him. Basically, we're just looking at him as though, like, he's just not doing anything. He's there's just no way for him to ever figure this out because he's not doing the things that need to be done to figure it out. So, ultimately, they're all doomed. Because of the white savior. But anyway... Anne and this group, haphazard group, are heading there. For some reason, they take a stop because Susan needs to go scuba diving and photograph stuff underwater for some reason. And that's when we get that zombie shark attack.
Do you think they threw the shark in there like to be like Jaws bait?
I mean, in a way, like you can see that sort of... And at this time, too, there was... we're getting... Jaws and all the offshoots of Jaws,
Piranha.
Cruel Jaws, things like that. We're right in that time frame, and yes, I do think that in a way they were throwing this in there as like, what would be cool? We have a shark in here too, and so yeah, and I won't say that it was for nothing because it is a cool scene, and that poor stunt guy. Who playing the zombie has to be underwater, literally wrestling the shark.
It's fucking stupid.
Oh, you think it's stupid?
Yeah.
Well, it's stupid for the plot for sure. It doesn't add anything to the plot for zombie. Like if we didn't have that scene,
I don't need to see a zombie fighting a shark. I don't need a shark just randomly appearing.
But you didn't see that in Romero's film.
Good. Got bikers instead. Bikers having a grand old time at the mall, being dipshits and assholes, and Hare Krishnas. That's what I want. More Hare Krishnas in my zombie films.
I don't know. I think it's a cool scene. Is it necessary? No. Is it stupid in a plotting way for storyline? Yeah. Is it cool still? Yeah.
It's literally like a bro's bro. Like, what men like, and they're gonna come see this movie for. Boobies, sharks, zombie fighting a shark.
You've got all three right in that scene.
Yeah, exactly.
What more can you ask for? Zombies groping boobies. Shark groping
here's some
zombie.
Here's some seaweed.
The ultimate zombie weapon. Seaweed.
I'm pretty sure that's how you took out the tyrant in, Resi 3.
Yeah.
But...
So
no, I think it's stupid. I don't get any enjoyment from it.
I thought it was pretty. It's pretty cool. It's more.
It didn't help that the Blu-ray was skipping at that point too, the tension was lost.
But it's more an element of that's cool that they did that in a very dangerous way. It's like this could have gone Twilight Zone the movie, but it didn't. So we have this documented as a cool thing that happened when the cinema rules were not as strict and people weren't checking up on your productions all the time, and you could do what you want and maybe not have the permits to film it.
Did you kill that shark? No.
Yeah.
Dead shark.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. once we've gotten through that part of it with the zombie shark element, though, everybody survives that. You know, so surprisingly, they survive it. But the one thing that it does add to the storyline is that it causes them to have to stop at the island. They have to stop because how are they going to get back? The shark damaged their boat, so they've got to stop, and that's what gets them to the island where the zombies have taken over.
You'd think the guys that shuttle this boat that know the area would be like the guy talking to fucking Vince Vaughn in The Lost World, like, oh no, that's Isla Nublar. No,
right?
We don't go, you know.
Well, they do say that it's cursed, and that, but they're okay with going. I guess they don't, you know. They're just like, well, I don't know.
That's what this movie needs, Vince Vaughn.
Yeah, it does. That'd be great. Zombie remake with Vince Vaughn. Basically, like the Psycho remake, just shot for shot, but with Vince Vaughn.
Like,
Let's talk about because we talked about the scene with the zombies and the sharks, which is a very iconic moment from Zombie. Let's talk about the other iconic moment, which is the eye skewering scene, which has probably the biggest gore effect of the film, and one of the elements of Italian cinema, eyes, because everybody, and especially Fulci, loves eyes. What did you think about that scene, especially since it's the first time that you've seen it?
It's pretty cool.
Wow, you're saying it's pretty cool. People in the 80s were like, holy shit, that eye gouging scene.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's definitely definitely even today, you know, kind of like a little bit skin curdling, because just thinking about, you know, slowly, and he perfectly does shoot like the eye and then the wood and the eye and the wood, and then you actually, it's not like you see like from you actually, you know, get to see, you know, wood going, you know, through like a prosthetic eye close up, but it looks, you know, done well enough to where it's like, ooh, you know, like you know that's, you know, like, you know, it's you know, special effects. It's still like, you know, little skin crawling. You're like, oh, you know, shit, that, because that, you can just think of how awful that would be.
Yeah, I think it's the slow procession to it. You know how Fulci shoots that with the pacing. So you have, well, for one thing, with Olga Carlatos, I'm probably saying her name incorrectly, but she has some prominent eyes already. Like, you know, they've already shown how startlingly green her eyes are. So they've set that up already. And then you have in that scene the zombie attack where it's pounding through the door and she actually shuts the door and cuts off the zombie's fingers, and she leans back against the door and she thinks, oh, okay, well, I'm safe now because I've locked it out. And then it bursts through the door.
Grabs her skull and just, like, you know, slowly dragging her.
Yeah, so you have that tense moment of thinking that she might be safe and then bursting through. And then you have that really slow scene of showing her head just creeping closer and closer, with her eye creeping closer and closer to the splinter, with the focal lens of, you know, showing how, you know, it's both showing and hiding how close she actually is to that splinter. And then you're right with the prosthetic. I mean, now looking at it, and especially we're watching it in 4K UHD, you can tell that it's a prosthetic. But at the same time, it's filmed and edited in such a way that it's not really relying on the prosthetic to be on screen that often.
It's pretty quick, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing it gouge into the eye and then cutting away and showing it from the opposite angle of seeing
her head getting pushed in.
Right, her head pushing in as though that's actually happening. And so that combination of cuts is really good, because it's not just relying on the special effect work. It's relying on
the editing and the shots.
Yeah, the editing, the actress being able to sell the idea that she's actually getting pushed into splinters. And then not only that, but after you see the eye gouging, you have that other shot of her eye coming off of the splinter with you know, the prosthetic effect on her eye, which is another good thing, because it's that quick edit of going from seeing, you know, the fake prosthetic to then seeing that splinter in her eye. that I think is still a pretty good effect to this day.
I agree. And it also shows that these zombies actually have a little thought to them, too.
Yeah. They have some, some ideas on how to kill. They're not just biting. They're not just,
mindless.
Yeah, ripping. And that brings me to another interesting point about these zombies. Did you notice that most of the time these zombies don't open their eyes? It's not the case with most zombies. They generally are,
wide-eyed,
blank-eyed, but they have their eyes open. In this film, it's pretty generally seen that they don't open their eyes. So I think that gives them an interesting characteristic because they're not relying on sight to know who to attack. They're really relying on scent or probably mostly scent of their hunger to attack. I think it's interesting. It's not something that we see in most zombie movies that they don't open their eyes. Yeah, weird. Different. So once these characters get to the island, what did you think about that? I think Zombie has a fairly slow open. It takes a while. It's a
90-minute film, and the first 45 minutes is them fucking lollygagging.
Yeah. It takes a while and there's a couple kills spread out in the beginning, but it takes a while to really get into the meat of the film because we're waiting for our main character, who we really quickly find out is Anne. We're waiting for them to even get to the island and experience the zombies on the island. And so that doesn't really happen until about halfway through the film. So once they get to the island, I feel like the pacing really picks up from there. In the last 20, 30 minutes, I think we get a lot more action from the zombies because that's when they start to rise. We stumble onto these Spanish conquistadores as our dubbing tells us what they are. And I think from there, once the zombies really start to rise out of their grave, like Night of the Living Dead style, that's when the film picks up and really finds its pacing. With that, you get all the good zombie effects from there because we're seeing...
I would say it's mainly just the last 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Because even when they get to the island, it's still like a fucking Walking Dead episode. Doctor, they're sick. I can't figure it out, damn it. What are we going to do?
Right.
They say it's voodoo. I don't know. Go and look off. Come back. Doctor, they're still sick. I don't know what to do. Go see the gang. I don't know what we're doing here. What would my father do? Go back to the doctor. Oh, I don't know what, just...
Yeah. I do think that the film is a little confused at first about what it wants to do, especially with the voodoo element. When the drums come up and stuff like that, it seems like the film is going in a different direction. That there's actually some sort of, besides the zombies, there's another force.
It would have been nice to see like a voodoo priest or something,
mm-hmm.
kind of guiding. I mean, we get the hints of that's what's happening, but at the same,
right.
It's not shown.
We don't get that. And so it almost seems like when those drums start to be creeping up and even the one girl is like, I can't take it anymore. I can't listen to these drums. That it seems like we're heading in that direction with the voodoo elements and an actual human conflict there, which we really don't get. And so I think that when we're in that 50-minute range, there's a disconnect between what the plot wants to do and what it eventually ends up doing with the zombies. So it takes a while for that to work through until you actually get the zombies to rise in greater depth and see them attack. I think that last 15 minutes or so is pretty action-packed, though. It doesn't really stop from there.
It ripped a lot from Night.
Right.
That whole, them being trapped in the barn, the Molotovs, and then them breaking in.
I think
straight from Night.
I think that the rise of the zombies is a lot like Night as well, except obviously there's more gore effects to this, more zombie special effects work, a lot more rotten.
Yes.
In this case, and Fulci loves to use worms and maggots on his zombies, and the eyes, on the face, to get across like that another like gag reflex for viewers. You know.
Well, as I told you, and it's not just this film, but a lot of Italian films, like when there's someone dying or about to die, like they love having the fucking flies swarm. I mean, they could be like a nice, sterile area, and even still, you got the flies still gathering around.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I think that the bites are really good. The special effects work for the bites and the zombies are
So you
really
want to
good
talk
in
about the
this.
special effects?
Do we want to talk about it?
Let's talk about the
Sure,
special effects.
Go for it.
So this film, in comparison to Dawn, Mark, like the bite effects are definitely like inspired by Dawn, billion times better.
Right.
Because one of the best things that sucks about Dawn, even though it's such a great film, the zombies and the effects overall, when it comes to like the zombie bites, not that good.
They're lackluster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You expect
even
more.
for that time period, they're pretty, pretty painfully, done.
Mm-hmm.
Here, the zombies look great.
Yep.
The makeup and special effects for the zombies in this film are easily the best part of this film. Top notch, look great. The way they look so decayed and decrepit compared to
even like the people that they got to play the zombies, like they really got people that even kind of looked emaciated.
Yeah,
they're not even with the makeup, but just in general they looked emaciated.
Well, even like the extras, they went full all out and made sure like they looked gored up nice and good. You know, and like you said, like the maggots and the centipede and stuff. Nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you compare that to Dawn, where they're just wearing fucking like this purplish gray makeup, and it's like can't be a shit.
Yep.
Here it looks great. Bite marks, they're like Dawn's, like the way they kind of you see like the skin and the muscle tear away, but instead of it being like kind of cartoony looking, it's actually looks detailed. Like they added like different types of
there's
like
actually
meat.
one that's like literally a chomp.
Yeah,
It's like,
they like looks like they added actual like like meat and blood and stuff to make it look actually realistic and much more violent. The effects definitely in this film are, as with like we talked about earlier, with like the eye gouge scene too. Really well done. That's if there was a reason to see this film, I'd say for the effects alone, because again, as we were talking about with like the soundtrack, influencing Day of the Dead, I really think the effects in this film influence, Savini's work on Day of the Dead, which I don't know if he worked on this or not, because he definitely made sure to be much more detailed, and I think that also benefit too being like, 8 years down the road where the effects were better, but it was a lot more detailed and everything, you compare that to like at the end when Rhodes is getting, torn apart and you're getting to see all the intestines and everything, never would have done that, like, in a film around this time period, so.
Yeah, I think the special effects are really good in this as well. The prosthetics and everything look really good. The meatiness of the bites are,
it's visceral.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it really works. And even like the exploding heads and things like that are really well done. Or one that really stands out is like when they smash heads in. It's like really well done as well, with the whole smashing the head in and seeing the neck viscera still like on the screen. Really good. I like that a lot.
I actually liked when they shot him in the head with like a pistol, like a revolver. It didn't blow their head off.
Right.
You got to see like
yeah, the regular like bullet hole.
Yeah,
not a whole explosion. Yeah. Let's see. We haven't talked about Fabio Frizzi's soundtrack very much. We said that in a little bit of ways it is reminiscent of like the Goblin synth scores, but he goes his own separate way here, and obviously there's a Caribbean influence on the sound of what we're hearing for especially when they go to the island. But the main theme of Zombie, I think, is a banger. I really like that synth score that they gave to the main theme that we get towards the end with the action, because I think it ratchets up some of that tension when you have that almost like martial beat. It's like ding 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 ding. It's very thudding, very very well paced beat to it. What do you think about Freeze's work here?
It's all right. So I think some some of it's memorable, some of it's, kind of throwaway.
Yeah, I think that, the main theme of Zombie is really good.
You're right, where that kind of, as you said, that nice beat that's going, the way you kind of pace that out makes me think, like, the opening, like, beat to the Warriors, theme, like, din, 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 din,
Right.
So, that was good. I mean, it's not like, I do like that they were, use Caribbean influences on the synth, makes for interesting sounds. It's definitely got like an overall kind of, just Italian, like giallo style, like, like slow, like you just listen to the synths kind of like build and like the kind of like a just constant like thudding, like not that it's like the drum beat, but just like constant, like, like a heartbeat that's going on throughout the soundtrack. Nice touch. It's got, like I said, it's hard to beat Goblin though.
Yeah, I think there's some some downbeat moments of this score as well, where there's not a whole lot happening in the score. It's it's not meant to drive the plot, but just to be in the background, legitimately be in the background where you don't notice it so much, but there's something there, And then the other way that they structure that is when you're on the island, especially in the nighttime scenes, there's just like wind, just that's like one thing that they use as a sound effect to have something in the background, when there's action going on.
I think that I'll have to see other zombie films, but I think a zombie film like this, the Italian style of like directing and sound editing does a disservice because the fact that they're, dubbing every fucking thing over. There's, a lot of like sound effects within the film that could be naturally generated that just sound, like crap.
Right. Unnatural.
And just,
Yeah, but one thing that I pointed out is like when they drop the blood on the slide.
Yeah.
It's like very like.
Yeah.
Like, that obviously is not how
blood hitting
sounds
like
when it probably doesn't even make a sound. You probably don't even hear anything, but in movie score world, you got to have every little thing that you're showing like make a sound. It's got to be exaggerated.
Just think, the night scenes could have been so much more impactful instead of having like a fucking hurricane level, like like the Twister's coming. Go home, Dorothy. If you had like just like a natural breeze, like kind of breeze, like humming in the background or something, Yeah.
It's like they added those wind turbines in the background.
But again, like that's just a natural product of the way they film shit. They,
absolutely
film it so they can dub it all over.
It was, because it was there were always joint productions of we got some English speaking people, we got some Italian speaking people, we got some Spanish speaking people over there, and how do we reconcile that? We're just going to dub it all later. I don't think that Tisa Farrow is dubbed here though. I think that's her actual voice in that, but I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on zombie. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and now I'm like drawing a blank on what I wanted to talk about. Why am I drawing a blank? Oh yeah, that's right. The women of the film, because we didn't talk about the women. We mentioned it in the beginning, but we didn't talk about the women of the film.
They're all Barbara.
Yeah, that is when you said Night of the Living Dead, taking from Night of the Living Dead. That's a perfect example of stealing from Night of the Living Dead, is having your woman character who literally cannot do anything.
And there's no Ben in this film to guide them.
That's right. And it's not just one female character that does that. It's everyone. It's Anne, who stops and basically just tries to crawl against a wall when a zombie attacks her. She's just scrunched against the wall. You have Susan, who is basically just struck with terror when a zombie is approaching, and the zombie's across the room, and these are slow-moving zombies, and Susan has ample time to hightail it out of there and does not, and eventually succumbs. So you have like those.
The nurse can't do anything without the doctor's approval.
Yeah, exactly. So and again, like with that scene with the nurse, she at least does fight off the zombie at first, so that's more to her credit than some of the other women in this film. But certainly, that is, there's definitely a lack of female, motivation in this film to do anything besides follow the men's advice. Two, obviously, a disservice to the film because the situation just seems so unrealistic when you see like the characters completely just struck dumbfounded about what to do. It's obviously kind of stupid when you see it like that. And then the same is true of Night of the Living Dead when Barbara is literally having a panic attack and not able to move or do anything.
It's Johnny!
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, it does take from that element as well. You can say the same thing too, though, about Brian, who at the end of the film,
he's like but he's got a gun, and at this point he's shot like 20 different zombies, but he still hasn't learned his lesson.
Right.
Stop shooting them in the gut. Fucking put it up to your shoulder and put it in their head.
Well, not only that, but at the end he's confronted by Susan,
and he's like,
and he can't do anything. He's a deer in the headlights. He can't do anything.
And that's a problem though I have generally with like a lot of zombie films is like they have this understanding of like how the mechanics of the universe works when it comes to dying and turning into a zombie. And they're all fine with that, and then as soon as it's like a loved one, they're like, I don't know what.
Confronted with a loved one, and you just can't do it.
It's like, really, you saw her, get, bit in the neck. Take the rifle, butt, bash her in the head, and go on your merry way. Get the hell out of there.
That always is an annoying point because, you're right. They've already been murdered. If in their case, if they really had a problem with it, they've just murdered like 20 different people by bashing them in the head, shooting them in the head. And now you're confronted with one person that you can't do anything about. So that's another unrealistic element of the film, and that one doesn't happen to be a female. But in general, females are pretty weak characters in this film, even though Anne ends up surviving.
I was almost, the way it was kind of going at the end, I was kind of thinking they're all going to just die in that barn and just be like,
yeah.
With like hearing the voodoo drum beat or something like dun, 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 dun.
How do you feel about the downbeat ending? Because though they don't end up dying in the barn, they are going to be heading back to New York City, and they feel like they need to take Brian back as proof that they actually encountered zombies on this island, or face the death penalty for murder or something. And we get reports that New York City's actually overrun
again. They're in the Caribbean. What boat are they on that's getting from the Caribbean up to New York City?
Yeah, you skip right through, and I don't know.
How far out from the harbor were they to get that signal? Like,
they're actually sailing around the world, literally. That's how they're doing it. It's going to take them a while, but
this one's got a real good AM boost, signal. We'll be able to pick up New York's. And then, I do like it that it's like, it's kind of like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that's a great downbeat ending. This isn't as great. I like the idea. Like, I would rather they make it to New York City and see it's become a hellscape. I understand why they didn't, because that probably would have cost an exorbitant.
Oh, so you don't want to have the cut, basically, of just cutting to New York City and seeing the hellscape. The zombies.
What hellscape? It's just them walking on like the Brooklyn Bridge.
But you actually wanted to see the characters make it back.
Yeah, like back to the harbor, like
is normal.
Yeah, like walking around, like, oh, where is everybody or something? And then, like, that would have been
pretty effective, and it would have been similar to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where they make it back, thinking normal, and then they see like one person who, obviously
it was Don Sutherland,
right? Yeah, exactly. I think that would be an interesting idea for the ending. That zombies marching across the bridge is pretty iconic of an image as well. But I can see why you have problems.
Yeah, well, here's the problem with it is as they're marching across the bridge, there's fucking traffic going on it freely, like it's just another day in New York City.
Because there was no permit to shut down the bridge for filming, so they were like, you know what, the cars are zooming by, but You know, well, as we've seen in the pandemic, people go to work just like normal. Doesn't matter. You know, I've got work to do. They're the same way when they're in the zombie apocalypse. They're, you know, well,
it's actually
papers got to get filed.
Zombie Tim driving like the pizza truck. Like,
yeah. I get what you're saying about how that kind of takes away from the apocalyptic zombie approach of just saying like, oh, you know, people in the cars down below on the bridge. They're like, what the fuck is that parade doing up there?
I know.
You know?
Hell, today that'd be like normal. Like, oh, it's National Zombie Day. Here comes the assholes, you know, marching.
Yeah, it sort of takes away from the effect of the apocalypse happening. But at the same time, you're getting that radio broadcast of like, they're at the door. They're breaking in.
The National Guard can use rockets. Oh, God, they're coming.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get that, though. I think your idea is a good one to have them actually make it back thinking like...
I get why like I said, I get why they didn't, because that probably would have cost like...
Yeah.
They're probably like, oh, we don't have no more leader. We can't do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What they could do was film the zombie scene and the boat scene at the same time. And that's what they did. So yeah, I get it. But yeah. But a downbeat ending all the same, you know. Obviously they've made it to a world where it's spread now.
Which that is kind of a shame of this film too. Is I don't know. It's probably because I've grown so used to zombie films and everything's already going to hell. Here they're like, it's the ending of the remake of Dawn of the Dead. They got to the island, then what? And then they're like, oh, you know,
yeah, right. And
then like, shit, let's go back to the mainland.
For the island, you sort of have like the claustrophobic element of them being trapped on the island, but at the same time, it's a very limited scope. Like you don't, there's like 6 people, you know.
They try to make the island seem bigger than it is, but it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't feel big at all because it's literally just basically on the outskirts of that town that they're in, and then
it's actually hard to understand
the dynamics of the
island because they keep mentioning like they've just driven and then driven into a tree. And, you know, they've got to get, you know, Peter back to a hospital. And
how did he snap his ankle like that?
I don't know.
In that car crash. They just slammed him into a tree and somehow his ankle fucking...
He was getting a foot massage and his foot was tucked up on the passenger, the front passenger seat. And then, you know, that's what I assume. But yeah, so they were talking about this island or this hospital, and they basically just walk back to the hospital. It can't be that far. So the dynamics of how big this island are and what's on the island are not really well defined, and especially because we never see any voodoo people. You know, like the voodoo leader, but we hear the drums. Like, where the fuck are these people? If they're drumming somewhere, like, why don't we ever stumble upon those people? So yeah, the island is sort of a mystique of. You know, how big is it? You know, how small is it?
Because they could have, especially with the whole voodoo thing, they could have definitely played with, like, the island being, like, just, like, that area that they're in, but, like, actually showed them, like, running in circles or something. You know, you could have done something with that, like, you know, like, oh, this island, it's, like, they... Like, you know, Brian and Susan, they go from island to island, so they should know the area, and they're like, no, like, you know, like, what the hell? Like, we're just going in circles or something, you know?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, instead it's sort of just like, let's walk, and they stumble upon the hospital.
Yeah.
And go from there. Anything else that you can think of that we haven't talked about yet?
That's about it.
In your mind? All right.
That's all I have.
All right. So let's give Zombie 2. Or Zombie 2, a rating on a scale of. You could jump in if you.
No, you're the one that.
I'm trying to think of something
decrease
very creative here.
The rate scale.
Nothing creative. Nothing's coming. On a scale of 10 hysterical women, what would you give Zombie or Zombie 2?
I'll give it a 6. Okay. Like almost every Italian film I've seen, the plot is bare bones. The characters are wooden, awful. pedantic, uninteresting, and you can't be invested in them.
Yeah.
It has some interesting ideas. I do like the voodoo idea for the zombies. I think they could have done more to expound upon that, make it more interesting. Like I said, kind of show how the island's trapped in a fog, show kind of more like how the voodoo zombies actually work, because it's not like it's leaving mystery for the sake of mystery, and it makes it more intriguing. Because the film has a lot of padding, even in its 90-minute runtime, so they could have done that to make it more interesting. The pinnacle of this film is the special effects. If there was any reason to watch this film, I would say, for the gore and the special effects, it's very well done. I can definitely, like, that Zombie 2 poster itself looks really good. That artwork of the zombies' prosthetics looks very good. I can see how it's a film, if you're a fan of zombie films, that it's a must-watch because of the effects itself. However, as a film overall, I think it's, even at 90 minutes, it's slow, and it's kind of at times a hard watch. Just because of how fucking boring and uninteresting and how meandering the plot is. I think if it was more grounded like most Italian films, instead of fucking wandering off from idea to idea, it was a little bit more grounded like a Romero film, which I hate to kind of compare it to, but if it was at least a little bit more grounded in its idea, it'd be a much more interesting watch.
I'm going to give it an 8. I think that it's I think that it's pretty fun. And not watching it specifically for the plot itself, which I think it has an interesting idea for the plot. I like the Caribbean setting. I like the bringing it off of the mainland a little bit. And I like the white savior approach to this, though it's not really expounded upon, and we don't get a lot of information about voodoo here. But you have, some of the interesting ideas about like Spanish conquistadors coming to the island. While that doesn't really play into anything very much besides the one guy getting to say conquistadores. There is a white savior element to the Doctor here that they should have gone into more detail on. The other thing that I like a lot is I like Fabio Frizzi's score, especially the theme song. I think that's really strong. And then I like the gore effects quite a bit. I think that is really a reason to watch this film. You definitely want to check it out for the gore effects. Even now, still hold up very well, and are strong altogether. Especially the zombie effects, because when those kick in the last 20 minutes, those are pretty strong. With a nice squeamishness of insects and bugs and worms and stuff like that. I do think that there are some definite flaws in the plotting. It at least has a storyline that does flow from point A to point B. There are some places where we kind of lose that plotting for a little bit and jump off onto tangents, like the zombie shark element. But I think for the most part, we get a pretty resounding, successful plotting, which is not always the case for Fulci films or other Italian horror films. In this case, it does have a pretty solid plot from beginning to end. So I would give it an 8. As a horror fan, certainly one of those films, just like Dawn of the Dead, that is pretty influential in a little bit of a different way than Dawn of the Dead, but similarly. Yeah, that's zombie for you. So next week, I gotta look at the schedule. I can't even remember the schedule. I don't remember what we decided on for next week's show. Let me just take a look here. I made the schedule and then I completely don't even remember what it was because it's just been that kind of week. Let's see. So we've got next week Return of the Living Dead on 9/25. So you've seen Return of the Living Dead, the original, right?
It's been a long time.
Okay.
I've only seen it like maybe once or twice.
It's a very fun film. Just watched it not too long ago, like maybe a couple of years ago.
I'm pretty sure they used to play it like 15 years ago on AMC all the time.
I think you're thinking of part 2. Part 2 was played a lot. Not, I don't know about the first one so much, but the second one was like always on AMC or Sci-Fi, something like that. So it's a very fun film. It's got a lot of great moments to it, a lot of great lines, you know, in terms of both horror and comedy. It's kind of like tongue-in-cheek horror. So should be fun. Should be a fun show. And then just running through what we've got coming up later on for the show. We've got 28 Days Later on October 2nd. Train to Busan on October 9th, which will be a first for both of us. On October 16th, we've got, obviously, Reanimator. We've got to do that in a reanimated schedule. On October 23rd, we're going to do White Zombie, the original White Zombie with Bela Lugosi. And on October 30th, day before Halloween, we've got Shaun of the Dead. We're going to cover the other side of zombie films with a nice comedy to round things out. So hopefully you'll stick around for our Reanimated series as we continue through our Halloween schedule. Thanks for listening. Obviously, we've got to run through our social media stuff, so you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, pretty much any podcasting app you can think of. We're on it, so subscribe to us and leave us a nice review. We appreciate that. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We are on Twitter at twitter.com/Blood and Black Rum. And we also have an email at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com where you can write to us, let us know about the show, how much you like it, what you want to hear us cover for subsequent episodes. And as always, you can donate to us on our Patreon page at patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. We do this from our own pockets, or at least my pocket. And the beer costs come out of both of our pockets. So anything that you can provide to keep us running, or if you want to donate some beer to us to cover on the show, anything that you can provide is certainly appreciated. So check out our Patreon and subscribe if you have the cash. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you have a great Halloween season, and we will see you back next week for Return of the Living Dead.
Take care.